All right, welcome back again, everybody. And today I'd like to look at one of the most common uses in Photoshop is to improve either the lighting or coloring of an image. And you can either go to the extreme and replace that or create something that wasn't there, or more likely, you're often altering an image so it actually matches the reality of the situation. Cameras are limited in their ability to collect light, and so the picture that you actually get doesn't necessarily always reflect what happened in reality. So let's look at some of the basic ways, and there is a lot of levels here that you can go down. We are going to do a kind of a crash course, and we're going to combine this one with some new selection tools to see what other options we have for kind of isolating areas to do this color or lighting changes. So the first one I want to look at is just the general lighting. So under Image menu up top here, you've got an Adjustments, and you've got a whole host of things for altering colors and lighting. I'm only going to pick two of these because there's so many, but you are welcome to explore some of the other ones. These I choose because they're the most basic and quick for making the alterations you're looking for. The first one is brightness and contrast, and this is super common, especially in the age of cell phone cameras where we don't necessarily gather the best amount of light. The cell phone cameras are getting incredibly powerful and really, really good. They're still super tiny, so they don't necessarily grab as much light as, say, a larger professional camera. So while this image looks great, as it is, you can still tweak it a little bit by changing the brightness. So I can pump the brightness up, obviously to the extreme. It starts to look a little bit fake and washed out. But maybe I wanted a little bit more bright in there, and that ice doesn't look quite as natural thing as white as it might. Maybe I just pop it up a little bit, or maybe it's a bit shiny and I want to make it a little bit darker. So I can do that with the brightness as well. So that's just changing the overall light level. Contrast is another one that we want to look at. The contrast is the difference between light things and dark things. So when you have a low contrast, everything's going to kind of get grayer or move towards the middle, whereas a high contrast, you're going to get the bright things become brighter and the dark things become darker. So you kind of make those images pop. You also lose some of those grays in the middle. So this is really great for just kind of tweaking some images a little bit, getting them a little more how you remember them or how the actual photo was taken. And also to just generally, perhaps if you're combining two images, often pictures are taken in different lighting scenarios, so you can use that to kind of make them a little closer together. The next thing I want to look at, oh, sorry, and in this, like everything, when we have a selection that's made, for instance, let's say I wanted to, in the background here, you can see the lighting looks great here, but I can't really see what's going on in the stands because it's darker, so the camera has adjusted accordingly. So I'm just going to grab a selection tool here, in this case, my polygon lasso tool, and make a selection around that. And the idea, remember, is that we've got, when a selection is made, only the selection can change here. So in this case, what I could do is if I wanted to bring up some of the detail in the stands there, maybe I'll punch the contrast up a little bit too. Well, it depends on how you want to make it work. I can bring out some of the more detail in the stands by brightening that up a little bit. Now I can see that there are some people back there, and I can see some faces and the details there a little bit more. Now it looks a little fake as it sets, but that's a great way of being able to highlight some areas of an image. Going back to my original there. So the next thing we could look at is not just the brightness and the lighting, but we can look at under here the adjustments, the hue saturation, so the coloring of an image. And this is another big one, especially on indoor shots where you'll often got those fluorescent lights. They kind of cast a green hue. You may want to tweak that, or you may want to alter some of the images in other ways. So that's the hue and saturation is my go-to for that. The hue is the technical name for color. So we get what's called a hue shift, and you can pull this along so you can also do some fun things with that there and altering the colors of an image. What's happening is you can see below here as I move this slider, this bottom rainbow kind of shifts along. And what that's doing is it's saying, well, everything that was green is now blue. Everything that was purple is now green. Everything that was cyan is now red here. So you can see that the blue shirts, as I shift there, now go to the purple spectrum. So you're doing what's called a hue shift uh, on that one. There's also a saturation, and saturation is basically the vibrancy or how strong a color is. So if you have low saturation, you're going to drain all the color out. You're going to get basically grays. If you have high saturation, then the colors become brighter and more intense, and to one point almost glowing. So you want to be careful with this one, but you will find that just a quick trick to make a picture look like it's a little more professional is, and if it's a little washed out, is to just increase the saturation a little bit. Just that color kind of pops a little bit more. And you can see here, I'll turn the preview on and off. You can see, especially with things like that hockey stick and the background colors, those bright colors become brighter. And the reason that this kind of gives the illusion that you've got a slightly more professional looking photo is because professional cameras have really big lenses that can collect lots of light and therefore collect lots of color. So the colors stand out a little bit more. So if you have, say, a cell phone shot or a cheaper camera shot where the colors are a little more washed out, you can fake that more professional look by just pumping up the saturation a little bit. Again, be careful, otherwise you get fake glowy kind of things like that. But you can see very quickly, just makes that color pop a little bit more. The lightness on here, I generally try to avoid. I want to see the preview here. This is really just an overall black to white. I find that the brightness and contrast does a much better job of altering things there. Now you can also kind of limit here. Right now you're doing a hue shift or a saturation on everything in the image, but there is the ability to kind of grab a channel. So let's say I only wanted the blues to be changed. Well, then I could easily shift through that, and you can see that the uniforms, which are, and this stripe back here, which are the most of the blues here, are the thing that is changing. Now it doesn't always do a great job, especially because unless it's very solid colors, you're not gonna get a uniform color here. But what you can see is it limits the kind of puts bars around so that only that area of the rainbow can change. Um, Now, that's on a global scale, so this is going to change your entire image. We also have some tools which allow us to isolate some areas and kind of work with a particular spot. And they are all down here. There's three of them. There's the Dodge, Burn, and Sponge tool. And these come from the days of photography. The Dodge tool is a brush-based tool, and it will lighten an area. So you can notice you can pick any brush or strengthness or shape of brush that you want. And I can go through, let me zoom in a little bit, you can see how it works. I can go through and just simply brush on brightness. It just lightens up that area. You can also choose what you're brightening. You've got the shadows, midtones, or highlights. So if I wanted to, make the lighter things much lighter, it's going to really make those whites pop out there. Or if I wanted to bring up something out of the shadows, see if I've got something shadows. Well, this kid over here is kind of darkened in the shadows, so I could, lighten him a little bit. He looks maybe more midtones, and you can see, yeah, there we go. That brightens him up a little bit. There, obviously got too much on the face. But this is great for, you can lighten up areas, remove some shadows, apply makeup almost digitally to change somebody's visage. Burn is the opposite of dodge, and that is to darken things. So you can then, darken an area, make somebody look a little darker, deeper, spookier. Maybe you want to take that jersey and make it more to that color, or you want to add some shadow to an image, or makeup on a person and darken some areas, you can certainly do that. You know, maybe an area is a little bit white, too light, and is popping out there for these highlights. See, that was kind of shining in my eye, so I could definitely darken up or dirty up the white parts there to make them a little bit darker. Finally, we've got the sponge tool. This works with the saturation of an image. You've got two options to desaturate, or which means basically remove the color. So it's going to sponge up that color there. You can see that red just starts to become grayer and grayer. Or we can saturate it with the sponge tool, which is going to, you know, pull up areas of color there and bring some color back into an image. And again, a brush size tool, so you can, you know, get a smaller brush. You can change the flow, how detailed it is, so you can really have the exact control of the color that you like. So we've got some other areas here which I could, you know, obviously I've spilled over on a lot of these things. So we looked already at the selection tool, being able to select that in the background. But there are some other selection tools. Let's say I wanted to get a little more in detail with these players and just change their uniform colors or something like that. We could, you know, take a bit of time and go through and get in close and try and drag and make a selection around this person. But that takes a lot of time. So Photoshop's getting pretty smart and the ability to do work with selections. So our next set of selections here is under this this tool right below the lasso tool, and there's three of them here. And I'm going to go in kind of the easiest order, but not always the most effective. The object selection tool is a new one here. This kind of analyzes your picture, and you can see as I move over, it's trying to figure out what are the kind of objects in the picture. So it does use some artificial intelligence to kind of figure that idea out. So for instance, let's say I wanted to just tweak the uniform color of this person. I can click on it and see that it's going to make a selection around this person for me. Now, because it's Photoshop doing it, it doesn't necessarily always know exactly what's going on, and it can take a little bit of time, but it does, you know, pick up some nice parts of this. So if I now switch to another tool, you can see, zoom in, how well it's drawn a selection around that player, and it's gotten most of his uniform. It's missed the hockey stick, but that's okay. We can definitely work with that. And now let's say I wanted to, you know, alter his uniform color. Well, I could go to the hue saturation, and I can say, well, you know, let's make a hue shift here, and then you're going to make him on a red team, and maybe make the saturation a little bit more, and now you've basically changed just that one individual player. However, let's say, you know, maybe I wanted to grab some of the stick there and some other things, then that's not necessarily going to do the best job. And sometimes, especially depending on the complexity of the background, the object selection just doesn't do a great job. So we've got another one, a quick selection tool. This is kind of a mid-ground here. It kind of tries to figure out where the edges of something are, and it is a brush size tool, so we can make a smaller brush if I want. But essentially, I go through and I paint, and it tries to figure out kind of the edges of things. And you see as I go along here, it's done a pretty quick job of grabbing that individual. I could grab that. Oh, you see you got some ice there, but that's okay. We can also hold down the Alt key, and you can see right now it's on the plus. I could go to the minus, and that will subtract smartly from my image. The last one is a little more universally, a little more control over it, but it takes a little bit more work. This is the magic wand tool. So you can go through and you can click, and what it does is grabs all of the connected area that's the same color, and you have control over how much of the range of color there is under this thing called tolerance. So if I put down a 2, it's only going to select that color I clicked on and 2 connected shades, and only them that are connected there. Whereas if you go up higher to say 50, it's going to grab more of the image. Now, you still haven't got the greatest job here, but again, let's go back to 32 as the default. If I hold down Shift, I can click on and add to the selection. So I can kind of go through and build as I wish and to select more and more of an image. And so that's where this is really handy, where you can go through click very quickly. And then the nice part about all of these selection tools is they all work in concert. So if I then wanted to grab that hockey stick, which is kind of challenging, I could still hold down Shift key and I could add, it's a nice straight line. So I could add to the image and it will just build on to my selection. And I could use any of these tools in concert. So if I wanted to say, go grab the quick selection tool, hold down Shift, grab the parts that I can so I can isolate a particular area, and then make the changes that I wanted to. I can also, especially very common is to take somebody and put them somewhere else. If I go select inverse, that will select everything except what I just selected. And now I could delete and I could get rid of everybody else other than my player. And then I could take them in a different layer and put them somewhere if I wanted. So there is a quick kind of overview of several new selection tools as well as a bunch of color and lighting adjustments so that you can